Okay, my name is Barry Loveland, and I am here on behalf of the LGBT Center of Central Pennsylvania History Project. Today's date is November 9th, 2022, and we're here for an oral history interview with Christopher McLamb. This interview is taking place over Zoom. And Christopher, do we have your permission to record this interview today?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. I sent you a list of the kind of topic areas and things that we're going to cover. It's going to be pretty much a full life story interview, but we're going to concentrate mostly on your memories of being involved in the Biglia group. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. So first of all, if you could please say and spell your full name and give your pronouns.
Sure. Christopher, Christopher, McLamb, McLamb, and my pronouns are he, she, they.
Okay, great. And what is your date of birth and where were you born?
July 25th, 1979, and I was actually born down at the old Polyclinic Hospital in Harrisburg.
Okay. So I'd like you to just talk a little bit about your life growing up in your family of origin in Harrisburg, and what that was like, and what if you had siblings and who you had in your family and all that.
Sure. A bit of a loaded question, but I'm here for you. My family of origin, we were actually Jehovah's Witness. We were that congregation. I forget what street it was on, but over by division in 7th, division in 6th, somewhere up there. That's what the Kingdom Hall was. I was raised in that kind of environment, arguably kind of like a pillar child within that. Father was head elder, that kind of thing. So that was my upbringing in Pennsylvania, and it spanned throughout both the maternal and heavily on the paternal sides of my family. I do have, by birth, I'm the oldest of 3. So to answer that question, lots of cousins, lots of everybody, and in that kind of organization with Jehovah's Witness, there's kind of like everyone's up in your everything, so it just becomes like one big old frightening family to have to manage. But that was my upbringing. My brothers and I, unfortunately, were not close because of the way our family of origin was developed, just with my father working multiple jobs, trying to keep, everything afloat. Mother with varying disabilities, which just allowed her to be able to take certain things. So I definitely took on a lot of household responsibility, a lot of that, instead of it being a party of 5 sort of deal. It kind of divided us. So we didn't really have, what I've grown to know now with my maid family as, a good, healthy family unit there. But that was the upbringing.
Okay, and then what about school life? What schools did you attend in Harrisburg?
I was a public school boy in Harrisburg School District. Middle school, after Harrisburg Middle School, I went to William Penn for a year, and I transitioned to John Harris, where I did my final 3 years. I also went to Harrisburg Arts Magnet School for a year as well, and I was in the musical theater program there under the late Mark Farrell.
And what was school life like for you? Were you did you enjoy school? Did you
Absolute hell. Yeah, I love learning. I love school. I'm what I now fondly call in the blurred blork, black nerd, black dork sort of thing. I could on a daily basis be seen walking home from the school bus with a book buried in my face. I still don't know to this day how I didn't get hit by a car, but I was that kid. I loved the learning aspect of it. I loved whatnot, but school was definitely difficult. I think looking back on it, the lovely healing work we do once we have become adults, looking back, and whatnot. I think actually being a preacher boy gave me a bubble I wasn't able to appreciate at the time, but still, even with that happening, school was exceedingly difficult. A significant amount of bullying, strong amount of homophobia, but also, overlapping with issues because of being biracial, being light skinned, be having that horrible term, good hair, all those sort of things. Because I was, very smart, I wasn't gifted, I excelled. I did, I made a very conscious effort from a very, like, I remember making a conscious effort at a young age, of realizing what the world does to children and people of color if you look a certain way or sound a certain way, and making the decision at a very young age not to have that happen to me, which further ostracized. So school honestly was absolute hell until I got, I would say, end of sophomore year, beginning of junior. I think maybe beginning of junior. A slight blackout moment. My bestie would be very able to put it out. I was doing some poetry for Black History Assembly or something like that, and just the amount of harassing that was happening. Supposedly, I just went off, just completely, officially outed myself in the situation, and pretty much got the support of all the females in the school. No one backstage. And I'm like, what happened? After that, people didn't really mess with me too much. So I got a year and a half of arguable peace. I wound up getting like 10 or 12 senior superlatives, stuff like that. So by the end, I was able to turn that around, but took a while.
So before that point, describe a little bit about the bullying that you endured. Just what kinds of things would they do?
Well, the youngest I can remember is actually when I was in first grade, because unfortunately in Harrisburg School District at the time, I don't know if it's still the same way, there were a lot of children who were just held back because I don't know if they still do that in schools, but children who were held back multiple years, like should have been 2 or 3 years out, but still in first grade or second grade, that kind of thing. So I remember there was an incident where some random second grader, who I think should have been in fourth grade at the time, just picked me up over his head and like slammed me on the cement onto my back. And I was going to the chiropractor for like 3 years after that to try to correct that sort of thing. I think it's also when you're dealing with that level of whatnot, you desensitize yourself to survive. So like I remember things that happened, but they were just such a daily thing. I just learned to ignore them. But there was an instance where I had like a surgery on my foot, and someone found out about it, and stomped on it, and I went home with like a shoe full of blood, that kind of thing. Lots of calling me faggot, homo, this, blah, blah. And looking back on it, and having some confirmations after, the amount of locker room consensual issues of being touched in certain ways, being towel removal, this kind of thing, but not done in like a jovial, you're all just teen boys who are uncomfortable sort of way, was definitely an attacking sort of way. So that happened a lot in those situations. I generally sat in front of the bus by whoever the monitor was, just to avoid that kind of to minimize what happened, on the bus, sort of deal. I grew to a point where like the lunchroom bullying, like taking my lunch and throwing it away or that kind of thing, it became so bad. It's also, we didn't have money. Like we were arguably at below or slightly above the poverty level almost at all points in time. We were in the school program at all times for that. So in younger years, it wasn't always guaranteed that we had a meal. So like if I would be there and get a meal, sometimes that would be thrown away. And so I'm like, okay. So when I got old enough to create my own schedule, I just used my smarts and used my talents, because I was in a lot of extracurriculars as well. I was in band, orchestra, choir, forensics, everything. I would schedule those throughout the lunch, so I didn't have to be worried about the bullying, or didn't have to focus on being able to figure out how to get the money for lunch that day, or what the case may be. So that became my constant, and like highly, which I now realize highly desensitized to the extent of what I was actually enduring, at the time, just trying to get through.
Yeah, it sounds like an incredible amount to go through as a young kid. Yeah, I can't
It was a
imagine.
lot.
Yeah, definitely. Um, how did things change for you when you went to the arts magnet school?
um, of course, that was a much safer environment. Like I loved going there in the afternoons, because I still was figuring out what I was, what this was, blah blah blah. But there was definitely the very clear, gay boy tenor and this by, glommed to, and just this general open, artsy, more accepting environment, which is what magnet schools do for kids. So it was really nice. And it was walking distance from my home, so I didn't take the bus, afterwards on those days. So it was definitely a beacon, and a good memory. Going in there, being able to give me another artistic outlet, um, to help process what I was going through at the time. Like looking back now at the material that I was doing and stuff, I'm like, oh, oh. But it was a good thing. It was a good thing. It helped to find some catharsis and start, my healing process.
And what year was it that you graduated?
I graduated in '97.
Okay. And when did you first hear about the Baglaya group?
I'm pretty sure that's through my bestie. I don't know if she reached out to you. I forwarded her stuff. Jessica, she was Kinsinger at the time. She's now Jones. Um, because she was a stage manager for the stuff we were doing in theater at John Harris. And literally the second we met, it was like, oh, you, cool. And she started going to that group. So she told me about it. So I started sneaking out whenever I could to join her and to go to the group while I was still living at home. But she's the one who led me to that.
And what was your memory of being at the first meeting? What was that like for you?
Oh, it's frightening as all hell. I mean, talking about the, JW Pillar Preacher Boy who's sneaking out, and someone going to drive down. Was it Second Street? Is that, am I remembering correctly? Whatever it used to be at, like, who's going to drive down? Who's going to see me? Because, in the JW organization, it was all, they were, I don't know if they were formally spies. I want to be kind and say no, but I really think it was just spies. Like, there are people looking everywhere. And so I'm like, what's going to happen? Are they going to see me? And then I got inside, but it was a lot of kids who they already, knew themselves. They didn't know their stories. They didn't know the environments, from which they came, but they were definitely more comfortable. And my shoulders were about up to here for a couple of weeks. But then, I think he already did an interview with you, Frank Piper. I met him. I met some other people. Rob started to, ease into things. Cool, but it was definitely something I greatly looked forward to, and was very, very sad about when I wasn't able to sneak out.
Um, and what uh, what are some of your memories about some of those meetings that you attended? What kinds of things did they talk about or do or whatever?
I mean, I use the term "fat and black don't crack," but but so I don't remember a lot of specifics going in there. But I do, now that I'm doing this work myself, in and out of therapy. I just remember it being a general feeling of safety, which was clearly missing from literally every single last other aspect of my life. but it felt safe there while I was in there in those closed doors. That was great. I do remember, specifically they would bring up topics of what we were dealing with as developing, adolescents and young adults, and bringing in every once in a while like a guest speaker on a specific topic. But I strongly remember when they would bring in alumni people. Like that happened more. And it wasn't frequent, of course, because we need to have our own space. But those kind of things are what stick in my mind, when I think about it. And of course, the late night Eden Park runs as well afterwards.
Do you remember attending any kind of special events that they went to, or things
We
like
had like
pride festivals, things like that?
it would never been safe enough for me to go to a pride festival until after I got kicked out. That was not even a possibility. Like I think Jess went and other people went, and I just sat in depression for weeks of not being able to go myself. I couldn't go to that, but the only event I really remember is like a holiday party one time because we're talking mid '90s. At that point in time, I don't think the group was doing a lot of extracurricular, if you will, events or whatnot. But Sharon, I think it was Sharon and John who started that push, or was it Melinda? I can't remember. But to really get us going and to get outside those rooms, give us an environment. So I remember that one event, but nothing really outside of that.
Well, speaking of Sharon and Melinda, what were your memories of the facilitators and the leaders of the group?
Oh, the facilitators. Sorry, maybe my internet may be lagging. I'm sorry. They were great. They were wonderful. They were like, I don't know how John identified, so I don't want to call them all aunties, but like, aunties and uncles, who really just had our best interest, in mind, or welcome us, that were there to guard us. Like there was no doubt in my mind. Because I always had in the back of my head this image that like the elders or somebody would track me and come down there and like bust into the group. I had no doubt in my mind that Sharon would have jumped up with a chair in a second. Same with Melinda. Like, and like John was kind enough. We started having discussions about how I did feel a bit of a lacking because there wasn't a heavy representation of attendees of color, that sort of thing. Also, him starting to get an understanding of what I was learning, what I had in when I graduated high school, and was going to be leaving Baglia because I was going off to college. He made me like a double mixtape of Nina Simone stuff and stuff like that. So it was a very, very, very nurturing environment that still to this day they are very, very fond memories that I greatly appreciate.
And what are other memories of the some of the other youth that were attending the meetings when you were there?
I mean, the ones who stuck for me, of course, Jessica, where each other is like, boom, so that's there. Frank, is I still consider him to be my brother. Like we did the lovely, horrible, horrible young person mistake of we should date. No, we should not. But meeting his mom and his father and instantly just becoming glomming, and they just literally adopted me into their family. So I think that's him, Frank and Jessica are the strongest and longest relationships I forged through there. But we had Rob Schumann, Travis Varner, who was also at Arts Magnet School in class with me. We did, I remember, I think there was Stacy. Like most of the relationships petered out, but the people if I saw like to this day, I would be like, hey, no one with any bad blood sort of thing. It was all cool. It was all really nice.
Um, how did you or how did being part of this group affect your life at the time that you were part of it?
I mean, it was significant and and absolutely crucial in me starting to really develop an understanding of who I was, what, if you will, I was, um, and realizing, because in the JW organization, it's nothing but brainwashing. Realizing, no, this is not a bad thing, dear heart. You are designed exactly as you're supposed to be. You'll figure it out. Come with us. It was crucial in starting that work earlier on for me. And I think, I really think, I mean, there are multiple life influences when it can come to that final polishing. Because what ultimately happened is I got kicked out of um, the Jehovah's organization and my home because I was given the ultimatum to renounce my sexuality or get the bleep out. But having already been going to Paglia for I'd say maybe a year and a half at that time, that was when the light bulb started. I'm like, okay, and it gave me the connections to start going to the MCC church at the time that was in that same area of the city, get to know the pastor, get things in place because they were smart and they're like, no, this is coming. Getting a safe house in place in case it happened. Basically, starting at Biglia is what started building that network externally for me, but also the important network in my own mindset of no longer being able to refuse who I am and to start to fight that brainwashing and start to re-educate and retrain myself.
Did getting kicked out of your home or whatever, when did that happen? Was that during when you were still in school, or had you graduated by then?
I'm a summer baby, so it was the summer before my senior year. It was like right after I turned, or right before I turned 17. So technically I was 16 for it, but just about 17. Um, yeah.
And you were able to find
So
a place to live with supportive people, or how did that work?
by the grace of Sharon, the wonderful, wonderful goddess Sharon. Um, but the course of it was I've been going to MCC. They were trying to prepare me for what could happen. They had what they thought was a safe house at the time ready, and they gave me instructions if I were to get kicked out, what to do. Basically, which payphone to go to. Wait, we'll have someone come get you. That kind of thing. So when it happened, we went through that process. Ever being the trendsetter that I am, though, me going to this place started to revealing it was not a safe house. There were some not great things that were going on there that I was clearly not about, and I was not trying to give into. And then when that happened, and I got over, because in those situations, you start to blame yourself and blah blah blah. Once I got over that, and Sharon found out the information, she was like, "Can you hold out for a week or two?" And she went to it, getting in the network. And ultimately, it was Eric Selvey who was kind enough to open his home to me. And of course, I call him Pop now. He's the best father figure I've ever had in my life, very dear to me. But he took me in because of what was happening at the time. I was literally, the whole story. We walked 3 miles in snow, blah, blah, blah. No, I actually was doing that to try to hide the fact that I wasn't living in the school district area, to not have to drop out. Technically an emancipated minor, but like really in fear of becoming a statistic, being, another kicked out, gay kid who's going to have to go in the streets and turn to some sort of things. And they honestly, it all happened what I think is the timeline exactly as it had to. And Eric being kind enough to open his home to me is what kept me from becoming that statistic. And I was able to, I was working a part-time job or two after to keep myself going, but I was able to stay in school. I was even able to graduate with honors. And that's all, starting with, it really goes back to it. It's all starting with Biglia being that foundation for whether you believe in fate, destiny, whatever, but whatever was clearly about to happen, the grounding work for that all started there in that little room.
That's great. What did you do after you graduated from high school? Did you go on to other schooling, or how did that work?
I did. I attended. I went to Susquehanna University. I was a first generation graduate. I technically got a double major, and I completed it in 3.5 years. I just, I'm like, I'm already doing all this. Let's keep going. So that's what I did. Sorry, I can't hear you. It's broken. Wonder if it's me.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was your major?
Um, my major was music performance, and the double was in education.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And then what did you do after that?
Oh, yeah. As I'm working through now in therapy, it's like you've been working full time since you're 9. You need to slow down. I went directly into work. I graduated. I got my apartment. I went to a full time job. To take a year off. My idea of a year off was to work a full time job, and then I was able to get cast, hired by the Walnut Street Theater down in Philadelphia. Not technically my first professional gig. My first professional gig was actually at Open Stage. It was Belize and their Angels America Millennium Approaches. Like that was my first professional gig technically. I went to Walnut Street Theater and I just worked my way up in my career that way. But yep, kept going.
And how did being part of Baglia affect your life since then? I mean, how has it affected your life right up to now, let's say?
I guess I've always been, I want to say a natural caregiver, but I had to be a caregiver anyway. In the family of origin environment that we had with Baglia was the first time that kind of thing looked joyful and purposeful with intent, if that makes sense. And so seeing, knowing personally what they did for me, what they did for other people, um, if I really look at my life, it is whenever there's been that kind of opportunity to help plant that seed, or someone reaches out and is looking for that guidance, looking for that kind of kindness, looking for that kind of grounding. It really influences the way I approach those people, but I think it also influences just in general how I show up in the world. It started, it was a long process, and I continue to work on myself, but it was the first time I had a different viewpoint of a different way to show up in the world that actually started ringing with me, like one that's more community oriented, one that is more of service, that kind of thing. So that's where that seed was planted there and then continued to be cultivated.
So since your career has started and so forth, what about any relationships that you've had during that time?
Sir. I have been, fortunate enough to have had multiple relationships, to have been loved, to have loves, um, considered marriage twice, that kind of thing. Um, but none of them worked because the important relationship I didn't do wasn't loving myself, which a lot of us just do not learn, regardless of who you are, what groups you knew, or whatever. But I was jumping way too ahead in the trying to cultivate with others before I cultivated with myself. So I've had them. I've learned so much through all of them. I'm grateful for every single last one of them, and I wish every single last gentleman or whoever they identify now, uh, well. um, and now I've soundly been in it for quite some time, that relationship with myself. And, you know, I'm at the point now where I'm very much ready to enter into, you know, that healthy process of developing that friendship leading up to hopefully what will eventually be a partnership. And I'm also at that place where I'm good. Like, you know, quality companionship, you know, in whatever form that takes is okay. You know, I don't have time or willingness or desire for anything that isn't grounded um, in love, in healthy behavior, you know, in communication and nourishing. So if you ain't got it, I don't want it. So, but if anything develops, I'll let you know.
Okay, that's good. Um, and in terms of any connections with the LGBTQ community, like any organizations that you've joined since then, or things that you've gotten involved with in the community that way?
I have I have philanthropic organizations which I um, enjoy supporting. One because I actually did the professional artistic thing for like 22 years, and it dovetailed into what I'm doing now, which is like senior executive administrative um, work. So now I don't have the time to volunteer like I used to, which is something I do miss. So I would find organizations such as you know, God's Love We Deliver, Gay Men's Health Crisis, that kind of thing. Um, Here in New York, as far as active participation now, I mean, I'm struggling just to maintain a very very high profile um, sort of job and maintaining a house by myself, let alone anything else. So not as much as I would like.
And so what is the position you're in currently in your career?
I'm a senior executive assistant to a CEO in pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. Okay.
So I work with a capital K. Yeah.
And are you still involved in theater work and that sort of thing?
If a project comes up that I could consider like a passion project, I would definitely consider it. And I had one. Um, there's a play, a church, actually Judson Memorial Church, which is known as being a very wonderful, welcoming, all-inclusive environment to queer individuals. I've done a little Christmas piece they do from time to time, and you know my boss is awesome, so you know she'll help me carve out the time for that. But I just got so jaded with the whole theater thing. Like I've done my healing work, and I'm past that jadedness, but like I don't have a desire to do it on the professional level anymore. I support the work that they're doing now to try to improve that culture and improve that environment, but um, but if you know of any stage concerts, that's my jam. I love them. I'm here for it.
And were there any particular turning points or events in your life that were like major sort of you know, points in your life that you want to talk about?
Um, there are many. Um, Definitely the kicking out at age 17. I'd call that rather major. Um, my graduation from Susquehanna was significantly major because looking back, I'm finally able to look back at it now to realize what an achievement it actually was. Like at the time, I didn't know. I would just, but now I'm going. I'm like, oh, okay. Pause a second. Um, but I do know even at that time, it definitely was like, oh, you just did all that. Oh, okay, got it. You can go there. I would say the passing of my mom, which is Frank Piper's birth mother, my chosen, or I called her my soul mother. Um, her passing was a significant turning point in my life, and it definitely took me a while to get through that, to find, I guess, what you call the other side of through. It was a long process um, for me. But once I did, I think the major lesson for that learning point is how just to love better. I've rarely met someone with the capacity to love others as that woman, has, of just taking that with her. And then I guess more recent one, the most recent one was, having that light bulb moment of, okay, I'm ready to face it. I'm ready to do the work. I'm ready to heal myself. Um, I'm ready to heal little Chris, adolescent Chris. I'm ready. Let's do this. Let's do this. Significant, huge, huge, huge turning point that's brought on so much more ease and joy in life.
It looks like we are going to get cut off in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to give you an opportunity just to summarize or say to say anything else that maybe we didn't cover that you wanted to make sure that we do cover.
I think you're pretty awesome and you're pretty thorough, sir. What you're doing is really awesome work, but I'm sure it's appreciated. And we'll do volumes. I can't think of anything. You're great. You hit everything.